Making headlines here on Al Jazeera. The latest reports from Moscow say Russia is to impose sanctions on arms sales to Libya. Meanwhile, senior representatives from Muammar Gaddafi's government have been sent to Egypt, Portugal and Belgium on a series of diplomatic missions, but their objective is unclear. Meanwhile, on the ground in Libya, forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi have been striking at the rebels and at oil installations in the town of Ras Lanuf. Dozens of people are reported to have been killed there and in other cities around the country. The Dalai Lama has announced he will be stepping down from his role as the political head of Tibet's exile movement. On his official website, he's given no date for the retirement, but said it's time for a freely elected leader to take over. Authorities in Egypt have made a number of arrests after armed men attacked demonstrators in Cairo's Tahrir Square. Pro-reform protesters say supporters of the ousted President Hosni Mubarak used knives, machetes and rocks against them as they were camping in the square. The government has been looking into the incident. Meanwhile, the death toll from fighting in Cairo between Muslims and Christians on Tuesday night has risen to 13. The battles broke out initially when Muslims took to the streets to confront the Christians who were protesting against the burning of a church last week. Egypt's Prosecutor General has launched an investigation into that incident as well. In Yemen, the President Ali Abdullah Saleh is expected to meet representatives from across the political spectrum in a few hours' time. Saleh has been facing repeated demands to step down over recent weeks, and thousands of people demonstrated again at a public square in the capital Sana'a on Wednesday, calling for an end to the current regime. This after security forces on Tuesday night opened fire on a crowd of demonstrators at Sana'a University, killing at least one of the protesters. In Côte d'Ivoire, cocoa bean exporters have been ordered to get back to work or their stock will be seized. The disputed President Laurent Gbagbo wants to reverse the export ban that was imposed by his presidential rival, Alassane Ouattara. Côte d'Ivoire is the world's leading supplier of cocoa, much of which is made into chocolate. Those are the headlines. The news will continue in half an hour after PLO, History of a Revolution.
In 1948, the State of Israel was proclaimed. Palestine was lost. 16 years later, in 1964, the Palestine Liberation Organization, or the PLO, was founded. Made up of different factions, the PLO has been at the heart of the struggle to regain Palestine ever since. Setting up an independent Palestinian organization was not easy. The first challenge the Palestinians faced was to wrest control of their own destiny from the Arab regimes. In early 1965, a series of attacks were carried out against Israeli civilians and infrastructure. A previously unknown Palestinian group calling itself Al-Asifa, meaning the storm, seen here in training, claimed responsibility for the attacks. Al-Asifa was started by a small group of Palestinian activists in the diaspora. They believed armed struggle was the only way to win back their lost homeland. The Arab regimes did not share this view. They feared being drawn into a conflict with Israel, for which they did not feel prepared. Palestine had been an area of conflict for many years. In 1947, Great Britain announced it was terminating its mandate over Palestine.
I repeat again that His Majesty's government have determined to base their policy on the assumption that they must lay down the mandate, under which they have sought for 25 years to discharge their obligations to fulfill the growth of the Jewish national home and to protect the interests of the Arab population. In order that there may be no misunderstanding of the attitude and policy of Britain, I have been instructed by His Majesty's government to announce consequently decided that in the absence of a settlement, they must plan for an early withdrawal of British forces and of the British administration from Palestine.
Britain handed over Palestine to the United Nations. In 1947, the UN General Assembly decided to partition Palestine into two states, one Arab, the other Jewish. This partition plan was rejected by Palestinians and neighboring Arab states. In early 1948, open conflict erupted between Jews and Palestinians. In a confidential briefing at the time, America's Central Intelligence Agency predicted a defeat for the Jews.
As the Arabs gradually coordinate their war effort, the Jews will be forced to withdraw from isolated positions, and, having been drawn into a war of attrition, will gradually be defeated.
Following the withdrawal of the last British troops in May 1948, Jewish leaders proclaimed the establishment of the State of Israel. On the very next day, 5 Arab armies from Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq immediately declared war. One young Palestinian activist who was living in Cairo at the time was keen to join the fight.
أنا تركت تعليم كنت أدرس واجتمعنا إحنا الطلاب الفلسطينيين في الشبان المسلمين.
I left school. We gathered at the Young Muslims Association and we decided that whoever wanted to fight would have to burn their books. I was among those who burned their books and went and joined the Army of Holy Struggle.
The Arab armies were defeated. The newly declared State of Israel seized control of most of Palestine, with the exception of Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. By 1949, close to 750,000 Palestinians had become refugees. In the late 1950s in Kuwait, amid the popular sentiment of Arab unity common in the region, a group of Palestinian exiles established a secret organization. They called it the Palestinian National Liberation Movement. It became known more popularly as Fatah. Yasser Arafat was one of the ringleaders of this new organization, which favored armed struggle to achieve the liberation of Palestine.
It was in Kuwait that we named it Fatah. But before that, it was a continuation of our Palestinian nationalistic activities.
Such activities were aimed at gaining autonomy from the Arab regimes, most dominant of which was the regime of Egyptian President Jamal Abdel Nasser.